Welcome to Greenville Grit, Greenville residents in touch on 103.7 WTIB. This is the local show that keeps you connected and in touch with the issues that are happening and affect your community. Greenville Grit is sponsored by Ribeyes and Greenville Toyota. Now, here's your host for Greenville Grit, Terry Williams.
Hello and welcome to Greenville Grit. I'm Terry Williams here today with my co-host PJ Conley, and we are so glad to be back together and have a lot to talk about today.
Absolutely.
We have a wonderful guest with us, Mayor Pro Tem Candy Smith with the Greenville City Council. So we have two members of City Council with us today, and we've got a lot to talk about. The meeting last night and just other things that might be going on or coming up that you would like to discuss today too.
Okay.
Before we do that, let's thank our sponsors who've been so gracious to stay on board with us and help us sponsor this show. Greenville Toyota, if you're looking for a new or used vehicle, if you're a first-time buyer, if you need a lease program, or any type of special financing, they have lots of used and new cars to help you with your car and your purchase. They're family-owned and operated for 25 years. You can reach them at 252-321-3000. or visit their website, greenvilletoyota.com. We also want to thank Ribeyes Steakhouse. Ribeyes is located on Fire Tower Road. They have a wonderful, extensive menu and a nice room if you need a meeting or you want to have a party of some sort. You can get the room from them. They have an awesome salad bar, and we really appreciate them sponsoring us as well. Also, Overton Residential Properties. If you need to sell a house, you want to buy a new home, Michelle Connors, Trey Williams, or me, Terry Williams, will be more than happy to help you. You can reach us at 252-375-8620. So we're going to take a break and come back and just talk about all things happening with the City Council. It's going to be very interesting. Please join us. Welcome back to our show. We're hoping to have a very lively conversation about the City Council meeting that you all had last night, because there were some very important things that were brought up. I got to see some of it, but I did not get to see it all. So I thought maybe today we could just talk about some rezoning issues that came up last night. I understand you all were there very, very late.
Yeah, 12:40.
Yeah.
So that puts you out a long, long night, but it's very important, and we appreciate what you all are doing for our city and our citizens. So let's talk about the first rezoning that I saw, and of course everything's in the paper today, over by Clifton Street. Can you just elaborate a little bit? That came, I think, to the City Council at an earlier date and then came back again last night. Has it come several times to you all or to Planning and Zoning? Maybe you could kind of tell the public how that's worked.
Well, it's been an interesting road for that project. It first started off. We went to the Planning and Zoning Commission back in 2016, where I believe it passed, and then it came to us as a city council, and Councilmember Rose Glover was gone at that time, and it was denied 3-2. So they had decided that they were going to wait some time and bring it back. I think they have to wait. I think it's 6 months before they can bring back another proposal to rezone the property. And they decided to bring it back this month to us, but before that, they went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, where it failed 5-3. So it's kind of interesting. It went there first and it passed, and then it got denied the next time. So then it came to us, where it was denied back in 2016. But now we passed it last night, 5-1. So
had it changed from the second time they took it to Planning and Zoning until you passed it?
No, it actually was pretty much the exact same proposal. I think that, Candy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we received a lot more information. I think last night, more details. The presentation I think was a little bit better last night too. And I think the consensus, in my opinion, was that something was going to go there eventually.
Right.
Yes.
Right now it's been zoned. It was zoned as of before it would pass last night. It was zoned as commercial. And the developer that owned the property, I think he's owned it since 1969, and it's been commercial, and he has been unable to sell it. And he could go ahead and put something there if he wants to. He just has not been able to find the right product there. And he wanted to look at something else. He wanted to look at a different opportunity, and I think that the zoning that he asked for last night was an opportunity for him to make that a usable space.
Okay, so how was it passed? What will be built there? Do you know exactly?
Right now, apartments is what's
Okay.
being stated, for young professionals, market rate apartments. So
Okay.
the first time, I think it was submitted more as student housing. And I think that automatic had a drawback because if you see how many projects we have currently
Right.
happening at the same time, 3, that's a lot.
Right.
And so, of course, we were a little leery. And right where it was scheduled to be developed, looking at the exit that they have on Clifton Street, only with that
Right.
one, we just had some reservations, said, let's think about it. But then having more detail this time, and then knowing that the Greenway is almost in the middle of their property,
Right.
which I really wish wouldn't have happened. I wish there would have been another way that it could have worked out to
Right.
maybe go around. But with that, being the case, like PJ said, that it's their land.
Right.
They're going to develop it somehow. We can't just say you're never going to be able to develop your land at all.
Right.
But with the presentation of market rate housing, I think that's excellent. And then also looking at they're trying to work with the neighbors, trying to be as hospitable as
Right.
possible. Everybody's not going to like everything because change is
Right.
very difficult
Exactly.
for many people. But they're not going to develop right now. They want to have it prepared. So let's say they decide to go ahead and market the property again,
Right.
or decide there's things they want to do, then they can do it. And they're saying about 5 years. Maybe it will be sooner, maybe it will be later.
Right.
But to already have their down zoning in place helps out, especially since they were not really able to do some things they wanted to do with the current zoning.
Right. Well, that just seems like a perfect place, in my opinion, to put something like that, especially with the Greenway behind, all the shopping and everything that's offered up and down Arlington Boulevard for walking to
Right.
certain places. People who work on Arlington Boulevard can walk home to their apartments. That certainly makes sense. There's a small subdivision on that street, Cross Creek? No.
Cypress Creek.
Cypress Creek. And, I mean, I don't know how many people live there, but it's not very big. And then when you come up toward Arlington, it's all businesses. They're built to look not like your typical commercial building, but
Right.
but nonetheless, that seems like, I think a pretty good place for that.
Well, and I think the citizens that live in that subdivision, I hope they understand that something was going to be there eventually. They've been very fortunate where they're at right now because they do have businesses and offices that are around there
Right.
that are 8 to 5, 9 to 5.
That's right.
Business hours. So it's kind of nice. Most of the time they're probably gone during the day, and when they get home, it's nice and peaceful and quiet.
Right.
I hope, and my gut instinct is that I think that the developer that owns that piece of property will be able to work with that group
Right.
and come up with a good buffer and be good neighbors to the current development. And to let everybody know as well, the guy that the developer that owns this property actually built Cypress Creek.
Right.
So I think he's got a vested interest in keeping up the integrity of that neighborhood, and I think that my hope is that he'll respect their privacy as well.
That's right. So in that conversation, we brought up the term about student housing. So that's probably where this conversation is going to go to, because the other project that was brought before you all last night did have something to do with student housing, but certainly was not the entire project. So I thought it would be really good for those who didn't get to see your show, film taping, whatever, of your meeting, and may not get to watch it as a rerun, might like to know exactly what was going on.
They may not want to
Obviously,
watch it.
They may not want to, but last night, that would have been a good one to watch. If you are interested in what is going on in Greenville with the real estate of all kinds, it was a very interesting conversation. So a group has been working with a real estate commercial broker, and since last August, you told me, and to develop the property that is from the Grace Church to Tucker, basically, that 80-something acres, 82, 3
85.
acres, 85 acres. And so they had been to planning and zoning. You kind of take it from there, you all do, because you know the process a little bit better than I would have known exactly what happened. Have they been to planning and zoning more than one time? Do you
I don't know
know?
if they've been
No,
more
I
than
think they
one time.
went to planning and zoning last meeting, and
Okay.
it was approved 8 to
Right.
1 at that meeting. But that was the first time that they did it.
Okay.
Then they put it on the agenda for us to rezone. There was 5 total tracks. The first track was the one I think that was the most controversial, and that was the one that was zoned R6,
Okay.
which would, I think it was allow I want to say,
density.
I think it's 310 to 320 roughly, or 315 to 320 total units on that piece of property.
Okay.
And then track 2, track 3, and track 4 were going to be single family houses, or I think track 2 might have been townhouses, and it would
Okay.
transition to single family houses. And as they moved closer to Tucker, the density was going to be reduced. So they'd have a similar product,
Right.
and it would be a good buffer in between that. And then track 5 was the piece of property that was up against Charles Boulevard, and what that was, they were asking to zone that was office, which was conforming, and everything along that entire road is office from that point. From that point north.
So okay, conforming. So tell us about that. So this project, from what I could understand from an earlier conversation, is it conformed to the Horizons plan about what would have been always scheduled to go in these acreages?
It's like general compliance,
Okay,
which means basically it fits.
okay.
It's not something that they would be against. It's not something if we pulled out our plans, we would say, oh, no, this is not a good fit. So it was in general compliance.
So what was the argument not to put it there, or not to allow them to move forward? I'm not
do
sure.
Do you want the
I
truth,
want it.
or
I want
you
the
want me to give you the
truth.
political
No,
version?
I want.
Maybe that's why you have
Maybe
me
you
here.
can combine it. It's fine with me. Get it out there.
Okay, the argument was that people are very concerned about student housing.
Okay.
And maybe we have too many. Maybe we're saturated already and we don't need more. That was the argument.
Okay.
The reason that was given for voting against the project was that we have a previous project that we voted on, and it's already student housing, and they may lose their funding if this project moves forth.
Now, how would they lose their funding if the city council is already supporting that?
Well, you asked for the truth, so I'm just giving you the truth of what, why
how
was.
would they lose their funding?
Well, this is what's being stated. It's being stated that the banks will make it harder for them to be able to, I guess, get the loans to complete the project because they will feel like there's too much student housing in the city. And if they feel like there's too much student housing in the city, they might not be able to give them the same rates in order to move forward, which will be detrimental to the current project. So if this project that was on the table no longer is not approved, then that kind of leaves them in the clear to be able to work everything out. Now that's what was stated during the vote.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes.
By one of the council
By
members.
one of the
Yes.
council members, which that bothered me because I mean I know all the parties involved on both sides of this, and in the argument with the student housing downtown or up. Well, I don't know where it's at the edge of
Sure.
uptown or whatever, and that stunned me that there was already, I call it favoritism. I don't know what else to call it. Is it just a regular citizen favoritism to the project? That the land's been cleared. I know they've done acquisition. They're, I guess, ready to go. Have they been in front of planning and zoning yet? Is that ready to go? What's the holdup on why?
That should have been.
Yeah,
started.
So why-
From my
everything
understanding.
has been approved from the city limit.
So what's the holdup? If it's been approved and you all are all behind it, I don't understand that part of the holdup. My other question is, that project is, if people want a direction, I'll pick near Krispy Kreme. That tells, the public where it is if they don't know, or some people don't ride through that area like all of us do all the time. The other one that they're wanting is out by Bell's Fork. It's a distance away from campus as far as I'm concerned. Different people, if you don't want to live, and everybody doesn't want to live on 10th Street or
Right.
near the campus, that made perfect sense. Plus, it was, I actually think, a low number of student housing units compared to how many units are going on the one beside Krispy Kreme. Do we know?
I think it's relatively going to be the same.
About the same?
I think they have roughly the project that was brought before us last night was going to have, I think, a total of about 650 beds. And I want to
Okay.
say that the project that is proposed over on 10th Street, I think it's called Campus Edge is what the proposed name is. I believe that was roughly about 650 beds as well. So, I mean, it's relatively
Okay,
the same.
about the same.
It's two completely different styles.
Yes,
and
I think so.
one of the things that the developer said last night from Landmark Properties, which was the one seeking the change in the zoning to be able to do their product. One of the things he said is, he's done products close to universities and close to institutions like that, and he said he's done stuff outside. But he said the problem is with the type of product that they wanted to do, which was a cottage style
Right.
housing project. You just don't have that type of space around an institution. You're more urbanized. Everything's a little bit closer. So it was a different type of product. And I think that, he was in agreement that, hey, it would be great. He's done projects in the past where they have been really close, but this is something that's different. And the reason that he selected Greenville was it's hard to find 26 acres to be able to do a product like that. And, it's just not possible to be able to do it. Where are you going to find 26 acres close to the university right now?
That's right.
And that to me, that was the debate that it should have been. It should have been, do we as a city want to go ahead and move in this direction? Do we want to be outside of that spectrum of where the student housing is being built right now? Do we want to be off-site? And I think that, a lot of us had that conversation. And one of my issues last night was, and one of the comments that I made was, this was brought up last year when we denied the proposal for the Clifton Street project.
Right.
And one of the things that Councilmember McLean Godley said was, we've got too much off-site student housing, and we brought this up, and that was one of the things that really scared a lot of people at that time. And here we are on the cusp of a developer coming into our community to get the approval to be able to build their product, a $58 million student housing complex. And the night that we're supposed to vote on it, we're going to have reservations on if this is the direction that we need to go. This conversation should have taken place 10 to 12 months ago when we all voted that in that manner.
And that was my challenge to my peers. If you're stating that we have too much and it's saturated, put it on the agenda.
Right.
Because you can do something about it. Put it on the agenda, ask for the reports. Let's have a true study done so we can all look at it and say, hey, we're too saturated or we're not. And then if we are, the decisions we make, I think the people will already know, any developers will already know where we stand, because at that meeting, it's a public meeting, we can put out the information and let everybody know. And if we're not, again, we can share that information and people can come and make the request saying, hey, they're saying it's not too saturated and we can still do it. But to not say anything and have someone to do work for an entire year, and they do all the work that's necessary, they communicate with the parties in the area, communicate with the surrounding businesses, the church, get support. You're never going to get 100% support because across the street we had some people who were resistant. You're never going to get 100% support. But looking at all 5 tracks and being in compliance with the land use plan and how the process was done, that was great.
Right.
And I think that since we didn't take the steps to say, okay, let's research, to now limit it is an issue.
I think so,
but
too.
Let me tell you what was more confusing to me. We voted no on the project off Charles for no more student housing for right now.
Okay.
And it appeared as if the vote was no so that someone else can finish their project and get financing or whatever the situation. That's what was explained by Councilmember Mercer. I was a little shocked. But at the same meeting, the request was, can we table it? And the vote was by everybody, yes, to table it. Well, if you voted no and you thought it was too much student housing, why would you vote to table it? Because your vote should have been no, there's still too much student housing until the research is done. And then they can come back before the council again. But that was not the vote, which made it very confusing to me, because what it appeared that we were doing is we're going to vote no on you right now so that we can make sure that this developer gets everything they need.
Right.
Then we're going to vote yes for you, and then you can do it. So that argument about too much student housing is then not a true argument.
No, it isn't.
Well, and I think in the same manner too, that I think we did a disservice to both developers. Because typically, or what ended up happening was 2 months now will go by, and what's going to happen between this developer that's on 10th Street? What good is it going to be for us to wait 2 months if that was the what the concern was about this developer? What's going to change from there in 2 months, and what's going to change from Landmark Properties? in
That's
2
the
months.
part I don't know.
All we're doing is we're delaying the process, and we're just leaving both projects in limbo. And I think it was a disservice, to be honest with you, with both products last night. You're talking about $100 million of investment in our community that's sitting in limbo
We
right
just
now.
put it in the air and said, well, let's just see what happens.
Well, the landmark project where they wanted one of the tracks to be student housing, the other part of what was going to also happen there would have been wonderful for our community. So they were going to do townhomes and single-family houses. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we need that. We're in real estate, so of course I want some of that development done the right way, and it sounds like this was going to be a top-of-the-line project for us to have and make a statement for us. My other concern is I really can't get Tara's condominiums objection. I mean, I understand. Was it the traffic? Was it what was their
They stated
issue?
that it was traffic. I asked that question, and they said the traffic would be affected 4%. That was it, because that was one of my questions. But that's the only thing I continued to hear them say was traffic and traffic. I mean, I didn't really hear anything else because it was stated that it was in walkable distance of several things to be, but traffic was the main thing I heard coming out of Tara. So I don't know why that was a major issue. Maybe if I'm driving that way every morning.
Well, is there current zoning right now on that property? Besides the commercial, you said the track one intent was for commercial.
Right now, everything is zoned RA20, which is a residential agricultural. So you could build single family houses on that.
But that would not make sense completely for someone to spend that kind of money with that amount of land in that area to be completely single family.
Correct.
Did not make the numbers don't work.
Right.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah,
let
I
me tell you
understand that.
what we have to get out of the habit of. Sometimes people, I mean, if they want to develop their property, they have an opportunity to develop the way they want to. It's a blessing when they do work with the neighbors, and that's what they were doing, working and trying to be consistent, as long as they're with the plan. But I can't tell you what to do with your product and how to do your product, because that's your product.
Right.
And we have to be very mindful that we can't do that. But change is tough for people to take.
No, it is. Well, let's take a quick break right now. We'll come back in a few minutes and wrap up the discussion with a few more points we want to bring out about last night's city council meeting. Welcome back. We've had a great discussion today about, and this won't be the end of the discussion, I'm sure, but they had a really in-depth meeting last night at the City Council about a couple of projects, and the one that seemed to bring the most in the paper today in discussion was the one we're talking about over on Charles. And I mean, I have a question because Tommy Taft, who has an obvious interest in the one on 10th Street, did get up and make a comment, and they've quoted it in the Daily Reflector today. I worry about what will happen to those outlying developments like North Campus Crossing. If you put 700 beds at the Charles location, it'll draw away from these places. The market will be overbuilt. To me, he just did himself a disservice because his project's not built yet either. I'm not saying it shouldn't be built. I know we're looking for the university to grow, and I'm sure, hopefully, we're going to fill all these beds. Are the beds that are at the project they built across from Chico's in the Uptown area, are they full?
Yeah, from
That
what I
building's
understand,
full.
I think they're almost
Yeah.
100% leased out for the
So,
2017
and the province
school year.
looks like it's doing well, and so I'm really not getting, I guess, that argument. But I do think North Campus Crossing is a completely different project than anything that we've had, and the Charles Street can't be compared to North Campus because the location to me is much better on Charles than North Campus was. Because I'd heard a lot of negative comments about North Campus, about management, about repairs, just about a lot of things, and I think the project was huge. How many units are there?
Oh my gosh! From what I understand, I think it might be one of the largest
Yeah.
student complexes in the entire country.
So
Which
that
one?
might
North Campus Crossing.
So that might have been
Yeah,
the issue
it's
more
huge.
than having the housing itself is controlling the size of it, which the others look like they're in pretty good size shape to me. So maybe
Which
that
means
was the
I think
problem.
it might have to be repurposed
Yeah.
in order to be effective financially.
I don't know. We got to wrap this up in just a few minutes. Candy, do you have anything you want to add to any of the conversation or any other announcements you want to make?
Well, the only thing that I would say is like I said last night, I only make decisions based on valid information. And it was a very tragic situation, what happened last night.
Yes.
I hate that it happened the way that it did. I wish it could have been differently.
Right.
And when I heard some of the reason why
Right.
the vote was taken, that did shock me. It threw me
Right.
off. But everybody has their own reasons, and they're entitled to it. So I know why I voted the way that I did, and I'm going to continue to make sure that I'm trying to help the city move forward,
Right.
not just my district, but the city as a whole,
Right.
and make sure that the processes that we have, they should be effective, they should be fair and efficient, and we need to
Right.
make sure we work together as a council and do those things that we say we really want to do and not talk about it,
Right.
but we need to
I
be
agree.
about it.
Anything you want to add to that? We're about ready to wrap this up.
No, I think I'm very thankful that Candy was able to join us today. She had a
too.
lot of
Thank you
good
so
insight
much.
from last night's meeting, where we're heading as a council, and thankful for everything she's done.
Thank you for joining us. You can join us again Friday night at 6:30, Saturday morning at 9:30. And thank our sponsors, Greenville Toyota, Ribeyes, and Overton Residential Properties. And we'll see you next time.